Okay, now we can start. This is for the viewers at home. Order of operations. I heard somebody say Pemdas. All right, so what is order of operations? Well, it's important to know order of operations is some more rules. Don't we love rules in this class? But it's in a very, very, very important rule. All right? It reigns supreme amongst all of math. You must have order of operations in your head at all times. Order of operations, order of operations. And what it is it's an order of operations. There's an order to what you must do when given some math problem, an expression, such as this basic one here. Here's an expression, 2 plus 4 times 5, right? What must you do first? Multiply. And then you do the addition. Why? It's because there is an order of operations. And it is known as the acronym Pemdas. And I'm going to explain it to you. So I'm pretty sure in school you guys were taught this. Right? Pemdas, you guys were taught it, maybe, maybe not. And you guys were taught the acronym, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Yeah. Right? It's fine, right? But do a favor for me. Have this in your head at all times instead. All right? Don't have it in your head, it's all going straight down, because that just makes you think that multiplication and division, or multiplication comes before division and adding comes before subtraction. And that's not the case. I'm going to get to that. First things first, Pemdas, order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. What does each of these mean? P, what does that mean? Parentheses. It means whatever's inside parentheses, you got to do that first. Right? So if there was a 2 plus 5, and over here there was a 2 times 3, you'll do the 2 plus 5 first, because it's inside the parentheses. Exponents. What are exponents? Powers and... what's the cousin of the power? The roots. Powers and roots. So we have x squares and cubes and all this. And then we have the square roots. Those are exponents. All right? Then comes multiplication and division. I make these two joint. They're together. You must think of them as equals. That's why I put them next to each other. Multiplication does not come before division, and division does not come before multiplication. They are both equally important. You just do whichever one happens to come first. That's all. If you're given something like this, 2 times 2 divided by 2, guess what do you do first? 2 times 2 equals 4. Then you divide by 2, creating 2. What if you had it like this? 2 divided by 2 is what? Times that by 2, because you brought that one down. 2. Coincidence. Both of these answers came out the same, right? But don't think the answers are always going to come out the same. You must always do whichever one comes first. That's the rule of multiplying and dividing. They are both equally important. You just do whichever one comes first. So we got multiplication and division there, right? And that same rule applies to adding and subtracting. Both of those are equally important. You just do whichever one comes first. Pemdas. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, adding and subtracting. Pretty straightforward? Cool. We're done? No. No, we got to do some examples. We got to do some examples. By the way, this week is filled with order of operations. So this is a good example right here. What if I were to write 5 plus 3 squared So look at this beast of an expression. For a lot of people, this is intimidating, when really it's not. Right, Randy? Right, Noel? For a lot of people, this might be intimidating, but it's really not. Not as long as you follow the order of operations, right? So, order of operations. What must I do first? Parentheses. So, do we see any parentheses? Where's the parentheses at? Well, a lot of students will say, there's one there and then there's one here, Neil. Sure. Literally, there is parentheses here. But is there anything to do inside the parentheses? There's nothing to do inside the parentheses. So you don't count that as parentheses. In this case, the parentheses is just indicating the -1, and it's actually representing something more. It's actually representing multiplication. We'll get to that. But for right now, I spotted my very first thing that I must solve. I must solve inside this parentheses. What's 5 plus 3? So guess what? This is what you guys are going to be doing today. You guys are not just going to have that 8 in your head and then move on. You're going to be tedious with your work. You're going to solve this answer and put the answer down. And then, yes, you're going to be tedious and write everything else out. After you make one change, rewrite everything. Pretty sure you guys as teachers were saying that in school. Rewrite your steps, or write out your steps. It's not because they were trying to be mean or anything. It's because it truly does help you. You make one mistake in your order of operations, you could at least go back into your steps and say, oh my God, I multiplied when I was supposed to divide first. So write your steps every step of the way. So I just made my 5 plus 3 become an 8. So cool. What do I do now? Well, we've already determined there is no other parentheses, so you move down your list, exponents. In this case, what exponent is there? 8 squared, right? So again, what does this become? What's 8 squared? You guys got to learn your perfect squares, right? 8 squared is 64. What's the square root of 64? 8. Have this in your head at all times. And guess what? Yes, my friends, you will rewrite your steps. All right, now looking at this problem right here. What must you do first? Yeah. So, we have a couple operations, but the very first operation you must do, moving down the list from exponents, is multiplication and division, right? Do you see any multiplication and divisions? Yes, I do. Which one comes first? Well, if you guys don't know, fractions are division. We went over that. 64 divided by 4 is what? That's not right. Hold on. Yeah, no, it is 16. But what they got, that's funny. They jumped ahead. They jumped ahead in the worksheet, so avoid that in the worksheet. They immediately multiplied the 3 times -1 to create -3, right? Fine. For those of you that are more up there. But for in this example, we're doing it step by step, right? So 64 divided by 4 is 16. Then you just bring everything else down and you treat it as another step. Looking at it right here, right now, what must you do next? Well, I already divided, but guess what? This means multiplication, my friends. Any number next to another number that's in a parentheses means multiplication. We are no longer in basic arithmetic in which you see this. You don't see that anymore. The X is going to be an important letter that you will see in the near future. So, to not confuse you, they don't use X for multiplication anymore. They use this right here as a multiplication operation. And sure, in rare occasions, you might see the little dot. But that's rare occasions. Here in algebra world, we love the parentheses as an multiplication symbol. So, with that in mind, I must do 3 times -1. What does that become? Three times -1 is -3, right? Oh my gosh. What do we do here? What do we do here, you guys? 16 plus -3. Well, how about we revert back to our rules that we've all come to love? Is it an addition problem? Yes. Are they same signs or different signs? So what must I do? So what's the difference between 16 and 3? 13? What's the sign of the bigger number? So it's just 13. From this, I got my answer of 13. And it's all because of the order of operations. Step by step by step by step, you keep on chugging away until you get one little measly little number, and that's your answer. Does that make sense? Pemdas. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, adding and subtracting. So how about we do one more? I'm gonna make this one. It might bite me in the butt, because it might come out decimal number, right? You could get paid a lot creating math problems for books and workbooks and whatnot. Keep that in mind if any of you want to go into that field. Okay, so we got something like this. We got something like this. I customized it from what the example was. So. This one might look a little different, but it's still not. What's the only different weird thing that you guys see? Brackets, right? Guess what? Those are parentheses. The brackets, either they give it to you in bracket form, or they give it to you in just bigger parentheses form. It doesn't matter. They're both the same thing. The reason why they did that is because to let you know, yo, inside this big parentheses right in here, inside all of this, guess what? You have a nested parentheses, a parentheses inside a parentheses. That's why they're nice, and I don't like this because I don't like being nice, but they were nice and they helped you by putting in brackets so that you immediately know, oh man, I got nested parentheses. I got a parentheses inside a parentheses. But anyways, that's what the bracket means. It's just parentheses. So, once again, what's my order of operations? Pemdas. Very quickly. What are my Pemdas? What does each one represent? P, E, M, D, A, S. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, addition and subtraction, right? So, with that in your head, you guys must memorize this rule. What must I do first? Well, let's go into this parentheses, this big one right there, and we'll realize there's even more of a parentheses, so I must go all the way in there. What is negative 4 plus 3? And guess what? Yes, my friends, you will rewrite everything. You will make it a habit of rewriting everything. Now what do? Well, we're still looking inside this parentheses. And my negative 1, sure, it still has parentheses around it, but there's nothing to do left inside. And yes, you must bring down your parentheses every time. What happened? There it is. So I have to do, inside this big parentheses, I have to do the multiplication that I see, which is 5 times negative 1. What is 5 times negative 1? So guess what? You rewrite your whole problem. So, what must I do now? 5 plus 2. Why? Because it's still under this parentheses, and the order of operation tells us always do what's inside parentheses first. What's negative 5 plus 2? Jeez. Yeah, I'll throw it over here. So 5 plus 2 is negative 3, and I rewrite it like that, right? Either you want to maintain the brackets or you want to make it in parentheses. Like I said, they're both the same thing. So what's the final operation here? 4 times negative 3. Because like I said, any number next to another number that's inside parentheses is multiplication, right? So my final step is to do that, which ends up being -12. Do we see the beauty of order of operations? Do we understand the order of operations? Everyone, well, that's it. Any questions? Oh, one last thing. Sorry. Pretty sure you guys are like, worksheets, give me the worksheets, give me the worksheets, give me the worksheets. But one last thing. Just because in the worksheet I saw it, and it always throws people off, is the infamous, this one I really am going to make it. No. I said the X will not be seen anymore, and I still did it. So you have a problem like this. That's a 10. So you have a problem like this, right? It's important to know that even though it's not there, there are parentheses around the 2 plus 3. A lot of people, not a lot, but sometimes students will be very strict to the Pemdas rule and be like, okay, I don't see any parentheses. Sure, I see parentheses, but like Neil said, there's nothing to do inside, right? So I move down the list. Let me do my squares. Okay, so there's a square right there. 5 squared, what does it become? 25. And then they go, okay, is there any multiplication or division? Yes, there's these multiplication and divisions, right? Then they do that to make it become, and then they do this one to become, then they say, okay, all multiplications done. Now I must do division, right? Multiplication and division. They did the multiplication first, doesn't matter. They want to do division now. And this is where it gets kind of off. They literally want to avoid that addition problem. So they divide, they do something weird. They do 2 divided by 10. And then 3 divided by 10, and just way off, right? You must know right off the bat that even though it's not there, you have to do your 2 plus 3 first. It's because it's on top of the fraction. So you could have done that right off the bat. And you could have done the rest right off the bat. 2 plus 3 is? Now you do your fractions and whatnot, and you divide it all. But just keep note that even though it's not there, it's there. And it's only with these fractions in which you have to worry about that. Okay, now are we ready to do the worksheet? Cool.